Being understanding, being genuine, and being accepting will certainly help with conflict resolution, but there's something much more fundamental than this. And if you can learn to spot this in your clients and help them develop this, they're going to be able to resolve conflicts really meaningfully. Welcome to The Art of Therapy, Season 2, Episode 14.
We're really diving more and more into how people relate and how it affects our well-being. So the last time that we had a look at is really understanding if a person can understand that we are mutually affecting each other. So both that we are causing someone's reaction, but that we're also responding to someone.
Yes.
So, and it really goes in circles, it goes over and over. And that once we can understand that, and once we can have an awareness of that, that really it opens up how we relate to each other and how we engage, and that it creates a opportunity to actually to engage more effectively.
Beautifully put. Very, very clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is the last time you said that we're going to have a bit more, there's another skill, and then another skill has something to do with communication.
Yes. All right. So the moment that one can understand circularity in an interaction, the more that one can anticipate how to express, how to understand the other. And when we're both able to do so, it means that we can relate even more effectively. But that's just the understanding of circular causality. But the moment we begin to communicate about it and talk about it together, that brings another process altogether. Because the moment that we can talk about it, and now specifically talk about our communication, now we're involved with communication, about communication. Now, we're always communicating about our communication because, as we noted when we looked at communication theory, we're always communicating at any one time and two channels. There's the verbal, and we said just roughly 20%. It's not quite that, but we could just think of it sort of by analogy of 20%. And then there's our non-verbal. It's the how of our communication. It's the way in which we do it, our tone, intonation, pace. It's the timing, the context. These are all ways that frame or qualify the verbal communication. So we're always communicating about our communication, but we often just do it without being aware that we are communicating about our communication. But as human beings, something very special happens when we begin to not just do it, but become aware that we can communicate and are communicating about our communication, and that we do it together. Because the moment we do that, that introduces us to what we had discussed around communication theory, that we can begin to see that effect and intention, impact and intention in relationships and in our interaction are not necessarily the same thing. And that in this moment, I could be impacted by your communication in some way that you didn't intend, and vice versa. And if we can then discuss this together, we are now communicating about our communication. And wow, what does that mean? And what does that enable us to do when it comes to understanding each other, understanding needs, negotiating conflicts? This is what it means to be human. And when you can meet to communicate.
The way you describe it now, it makes it so clear. So I should just think back to the master's training. Is the meta communication part was always so abstract for me. It's like communicating about communication, but what does it mean? And when you frame it as it's when we start to talk about, we actually do it all the time, but when we do it with awareness, when we start to talk about this was my intention, but then was actually the effect,
Yes.
it becomes so much clearer because then we are actually meta
We
communicating.
are. And that's one of the cues, as it were, because the therapist, it's helpful for the therapist to consider, not just as we looked at before, is the client able to identify circular causality and those who they have meaningful relationships with, do their friends, partners, colleagues, are they able to, and how does that relate to the presenting problem, if at all? But now we look at what is the quality, is there a quality of meta-communication? Can the client meta-communicate? And is their partner, friend, colleague, whoever they're in interaction with as it relates to the reason why they've come for therapy, are they able to communicate? And you see that one of the ways the therapist sees that, by exactly as you said, when a client draws some distinction here between intention and effect, and then also being able to, that they show some awareness of talking about that it wasn't my intention, it wasn't what I'd wanted, and they show that they're discussing that, or whoever they're with is communicating in this way. Now that's an indication that they have a skill to me to communicate.
I think that's just, yeah, it clears up so much about it. And it's not just being thinking about it, it's actually communicating about it in relationship. And that's also where the meta communication comes in. You have to talk about it for it to be meta communication. Otherwise it's just internal. It
Yeah,
doesn't go anywhere.
indeed. Again, we seem to be back to the problem that we can't mind read.
Exactly, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I think with this, it's just when a therapist sees a client and they see that they struggle to meta communicate, or they don't have awareness that of meta communication. It's a skill. It's a skill that can be learned to a client and that they can explore together. But also from the environment is that to just to check whether the environment or the specific relationship, if that person is meta communicating, and that it opens it up so much to be able to work things out and to look at things together.
It does. It explains a lot. And that skill, which, as you say, is learnable, it's trainable, that just the moment a client or clients, if you're working with a couple or a family, any unit, the moment that there's any kind of discussion between intention and impact, or intention and effect, you may not have had to talk about it in terms of meta communication. There's a lot as a therapist that one won't necessarily, it's not helpful to go into any detail about, but what's happening is now a discussion that involves meta communication and learning that. So yeah, it's something that is so possible. It's anyone can learn it. And the moment one or more participants or clients learn this, the range of possibility increases. And in that way, that's also why we see such an exciting development working interactionally with couples, where one begins to actually introduce and utilize meta communication, and what that enables a unit to resolve together, work out. It's because one moves from first order just communicating to second order communicating about our communication. And that just enables us as human beings to accomplish so much more, to understand and work through and resolve things, which often forms the basis of couple therapy or any kind of meaningful interaction that needs to be worked out.
Hi, it's Marizaan, and I would like to tell you something extraordinary happening at Treatment Works. So if you are a healthcare professional and you would really like to deepen your therapeutic skills, training with Dr. Phipps is a must. In my experience, his training is so compassionate, it has high clinical excellence, and it makes therapy so clear. Training is also not just a space to learn, but it's also a space to connect, to share with others and learn from others. So if you are ready to deepen your therapeutic skills and to look at more ways to support your client, join us for training at Treatment Works. You're welcome to visit our website at treatmentworks.co.za. it makes me think that if someone, if you can show a client that they can maybe just consider, maybe I just didn't create enough context. And maybe I was in one context and my partner was in another context, and that's where the misunderstanding took place.
Yes.
We don't get trapped in the content. We don't get trapped on the content level, but we can actually move to a process level and talk about that and talk about the content.
Beautiful, because you've just identified something else that's so important is context. But the moment we can talk about, or one person can acknowledge that they hadn't created context, they're communicating about their communication. So when we're looking at intention and impact and effect, we're looking at meta communication. Anytime we reflect on creating context or lack thereof, we're meta communicating. And in a way, the more effectively one is able or learns how to meta communicate, the more effective one's going to be communicating, because it increases the range and the effectiveness of communication. So meta communication is a skill. It's exciting. One can learn it. Therapists can learn it and become more adept at it. Clients can. And the moment you recognize now, as you've just noted, context is important in creating context, so often we've communicated something. It wasn't the intention to have that impact, but through lack of creating context, we've had an impact.
Yes.
But the moment we can see that, we can work it out together. We can back up and explore together what was the intention or what was the impact.
The moment we can do it, it opens up everything. It opens up the possibilities to actually resolve misunderstandings and to work it out.
Yes.
Yes.
Because much of our difficulties as people, as human beings, actually involves miscommunication, misunderstanding. We looked at the communication model and the 8 different points where communication go off track, and that's just happening in a split second often. And so we have hundreds of thousands of these recursions of communication where it can go off. But just beginning to understand how it can go off, beginning to and recognizing this means we can work out misunderstandings. We can work out differences, miscommunications, because it's there. And it doesn't end. We've just noted intention versus impact. We've looked at context. But effectively, much of what we discussed in the communication model all involves meta communication, understanding and saying, have we checked in? And checking in, creating a mutual context of understanding one another's frames of reference. The moment we talk about that, we're meta communicating. There's just so much about meta communication. It's like adding a skill. So it's not just, do I meta communicate or do you meet, but how effectively can we meta communicate?
Yes.
Do we draw these distinctions? Do we understand it? Can we consider and talk about timing? All of this relates to meta communication. Even, I think we noted when it comes to establishing shared frame of reference, the communication model, the importance of active listening. And the second part is open-ended as opposed to close-ended. If we reflect on, am I listening to you actively? We're meta communicating. If I were to say, well, I think I'm not sure that I had really given you opportunity to openly look at that. I may have come in with a very fixed view or a question that was closed-ended. We're now meta communicating. These are exactly the sorts of things that the therapist is going to look out for in helping to determine or establish whether someone is able to meta communicate and whether the relationships they're in, the others are able to meta communicate as well. And that could relate to the presenting problem and help explain why they're struggling and moreover, what the possible solution could be.
I think this is just it's absolutely beautiful, and it makes me think back that it links to so many other things. It links to our expression of our needs. It links back to the circularity, and it's a lot of these things that we can learn. We can learn how to do it, and that's the same with the metacommunication. Um, that therapists can learn how to do it, and then learning or showing clients how to do it.
Yes.
And that's when we do that, it's skills that we learn that can actually help us to self-actualize,
Yes.
can help us to feel happy. It can resolve presenting
Mm.
complaints that a client comes to therapy for.
Yes, I think that's what's part of what's so inspiring, exciting about therapy, that it doesn't reduce someone's struggle or suffering necessarily to some unchangeable quality in themselves, something that we look at reduction in a reductionistic. No, much of life is learning, self-improvement, enhancing, understanding, trying it, doing it better, or certainly trying for. Life is through interaction. And the more we understand, the more we understand what some of the important skills are, the more meaningful it is for us as therapists, the more we can help others. But of course, clients are learning the same skills. We're able to assist them to live more meaningfully, to be more fulfilled. I mean, wow.
It's to be able to, it's so empowering to hear that it's skills, it's something that you can learn, and it's also something that you can help others with.
Yes.
Yo.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can learn causality, we can learn how to meta-communicate. Is there other skills that we can learn that will actually assist us in our well-being?
Yes, because what we've I sort of identified and looked at is that the skill to to punctuate or understand circular causality, that skill is key to solving difficulties, problems. And the skill to meta-communicate also enables us to resolve problems, difficulties, challenges. So yes, these contribute to problem solving, but there is something very special about problem solving that I think we
Okay.
need to hold over and look at in some depth in the next episode.
Yeah, I think looking at problem solving, I think that's gonna be very exciting. So looking forward to that. Thank you for joining us on The Art of Therapy today. We hope that you find this conversation really thought-provoking and meaningful. And if any of the aspects really resonates with you, please feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Until the next episode.